Aging and Elderly Abuse. And to do this, I am gladly joined by Reverend Edward Karanja, who is a minister with the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, as well as a family and marriage therapist. Thank you so much, Reverend.
Thank you very much, Faith. It's always a pleasure to be here in CAP TV, transforming families. Because like we always say, Faith, a stable family for a stable society.
Yes. Sure thing. And at the very far end is the amazing Professor Kashuda, who is the director of the Kenya Institute of Business and Counseling Studies, the KIBCO, as well as a counseling psychologist and an author, a writer, and they're all passionate about a family. Thank you so much, Professor, for being here as well.
Oh, yes. Always happy to go through the journey of families and what happens in families, and making our families healthy is our business here.
Sure thing. Now, we are talking about aging and elderly abuse because according to the World Health Organization, 1 out of 6 people aged between 60 years old and above experience some form of abuse in the community setup. And for me, this is alarming to know that people find it in themselves to mistreat an elderly person. And so maybe I'd love to begin with hearing from you. For me, of course, I have a lot of questions. I'm like, why? Why would you mistreat someone who is aged, someone who we are brought up to respect them? Yeah? So let's start with discussing what is happening in the society today.
Right. The abuse of the elderly people is something that has become very rampant with our contemporary world, and there are reasons as to why that happens in terms of orientation. In the traditional African society and communities, children were taught to respect their parents, and when one aged, they were regarded to be wise. There is wisdom in a person who has grown older and who is elderly. But that does not seem to be the way we look at the elderly people, both in terms of preparing people to take care of them when they age, and also in terms of how you look at an elderly person. What is the philosophy and the beliefs that we have around people who are elderly? And the beliefs now that we have and the stereotypes that we have around the elderly people is that they are incapable, that they are very dependent, that you're going to spend a lot of your resources on them. And this now precipitates the behavior that people have in terms of mistreating the elderly and not looking at them appropriately in terms of the needs they have, and that those that are abusing the elderly will one time be elderly too, and that they are going to be putting themselves in the same situation if the same was done to them.
True. And there's something you say that the elderly are now viewed differently. And it reminds me of even we as young people, when we interact, we say that, I'd love to go before I become too old to be a burden. You see, that's what we already have in mind, that older people are a burden to us in the society. Reverend.
Thank you very much, Faith and Professor Catherine, from where you want to pick it from where you have left it. And to begin with, it is true there are different perspectives today concerning the older people. In the olden days, old was gold. Today, old is burden. And so the way people looked at the older people as gold, as a source of wisdom, source of information, an archive. You know, do we need to learn something? We go to the older person. Do we need wisdom? Do we need to look for direction? We go to the older person. With the education and the technology, our children are not even asking us for things a lot. They Google. If they want to know when Kenya became independent, they Google. If they want to know when schools began, they Google. Not the way if I wanted to do something and it's not written down necessarily, I would ask the older person. So the old is no longer gold to many people. And like you said, they now look at the older people as being burdens.
Yeah.
And now that changes perspective in a very big way, because my children may not look at me when I age as an asset. They may look at me when I age as a liability, because I will start needing to be helped as opposed to giving. I will need to be receiving.
Yeah.
The other perspective that has changed a lot is because as people grew up, and and when I say grew up, you're now talking people who are in their 50s and 60s. When they were younger and they were growing up, their parents looked at them as their source of income. Like, I will educate my child so that in future my child will be able to take care of me.
Sure.
They looked at children as an insurance policy.
An investment.
An investment,
Yeah.
They invest in the children so that the children will come back to them. Today, the children are no longer that investment policy. They are no longer the insurance policy. They will be educated, they have their own thing, and they go away, because the traditional setting of a home has changed. People have become more selfish. So a child will grow up, get an income, and leave home, and leave the parents alone. The society that used to take care of the parents is no longer there, because people used to live in the same homestead. So a son gets married and builds next to their father's home. And the other son, the same, builds there. So when this old man or woman is old, the children in that homestead takes care of them. Now you have someone aging at 70, 80 in a city. There is no community to take care of them at that particular place. And that's why we need to even have a new perspective of aging and old age, so that people don't get abused. Even think now critically, and I don't know what Prof will be saying about, think critically of even a home, because where you can put several old people together, cleaner, and they can exchange their stories and they talk, and that there will be more fulfillment, as opposed to having one older person in the house alone with a caregiver, not even the children, and probably the caregiver does not really give the proper care to them, especially when they cannot be able to express themselves. Yes.
Now, even as we're talking about the view of the elderly in the society has changed, and we're touching about older people being viewed as a burden, let's talk about when or at what age do we now start saying, this person is now getting old, or someone sits and say, well, by the way, I am now an older person. At what age does this really become a definition, Professor?
Yeah, there are many schools of thought as to when we can say that this person now has entered the age where we can say they are aging. And the genotology is the study of aging. And they study populations, the biology, the psychology, the behavior, all the patterns about the elderly. Because again, even as a country, or even the internationally, we need to think about how do we take care of the aging population or old people. And genotology helps us to do that a lot, because we need to plan for them. And government needs even to have policies that are meant for the aged, and the needs for the aging population are captured within the policy, and seeing how we can respond to that. And I know we do through the Department of Culture in the Ministry of Sports and Culture and Heritage. And therefore, when you're thinking about at what point would we say that this person is aging? Like I have said, genotologists will say 65 and over. But again, we also say from 60 years and over, that is the age when we can say that really this person has to be classified here, so that when you're thinking about policy, we are thinking about how to take care of them, then we are able to study them from the 60 years and over. So we can start from there. And also, apart from the genotologists, we also have the geriatrics. The geriatrics is the care of the aging person. That's the care component, but there is also the study component, so that we can be able to see. And therefore, when you're talking about the abuse of those people that have aged and they are continuing to age much more, then we are saying they need to be taken care of, and we need to understand them. And one of the reasons as to why we abuse the aging people, or people who are put in the bracket of aging, is because we are ignorant about their needs and how to respond to them. But when we are educated on how to take care of them, even families, if they can be educated on how to take care of the aging population, they would do it much better. And therefore, as a country, as families, as the church, as communities, we need to ask ourselves then, because we know our aging population, what are the needs that they have, and how do we respond to those needs?
Sure. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because many people, when they see an elderly person being mistreated, they say, she wasn't a good parent either way. She didn't bring up her kids in the right way. Is it necessarily that? Because they say, what goes around comes around. So how you raise your kids is how they will treat you back at the end. Rev?
Yes, I will answer that, and then I would just want to touch on ontology and geriatrics a little bit. They say in Galatians 6:7, whatsoever a man or a woman sow, the same they shall reap. And this has sometimes given people comfort when they don't treat others well, because they think you never treated them well. Like if a child is lying to the parents, and you tell them, the way you are lying to me, remember your children will lie to you. And then the current teenagers, like one told the parents outrightly, then it means you used to lie to your parents. That's why you are reaping it in me. So, so and there is that aspect that whatsoever you do, it will come back to you. It's biblical. The Bible says that. But it does not mean directly that if you lie to your parents, it will be lied to you. It simply means if you do good, that good has a way of following you up. When you do evil, the evil has a way of following you up. And when you take care of your parent or an elder person in the society, God is a just God. You cannot be busy taking care of an aged person, an older person in the society, and then God forsakes you. No, He will not do that. And even as we talk about the aging, about the study of the aging, just to break it down, the ontology, it is good to realize that when you talk about the aging, there is no particular age that you say you are now old. Just to make that clear, you cannot say that now I'm 60, I'm old. You cannot say one is 65, they are old. There's no one particular time when, like, now you immediately turn the curve. Like, I have turned from being young, now immediately I am old. It's a process. I am old right now at my age because I am still continuing. I'm a process. You're younger than me, but that doesn't mean that you're young. You're only younger than me. If you put together with a 10-year-old, the 10-year-old will look at Faith and say, man,
you're old.
Faith is too old. Amezeeka. Because it is relative. Aging is relative. And so we shouldn't look at people who are advanced in age as the only older ones, and not good enough, and not productive in the society. They're not strong enough. No. They are still very productive, but their physical strength may not be the same as when they were younger. We still admit that when you get at 65, 70, you are physically weak. We have people who are even in their 20s and even younger and very weak. And somebody at 70 or 65 and stronger. And depending on how their chemical makeup of the body is also. I don't know that I've answered the question.
You have. Thank you. And thank you for putting that out in this, that there's no specific age where you sit down and said, man, right now I am old. I am officially declared as an old person.
Yeah, like I have attained the 31st
Yeah.
of January 2020,
Yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah.
There is not that particular age when you just turn the calm
Sure.
and you become the older person.
Yeah.
No, it's a process.
All right, thank
Yes.
you for that. Now,
Yes.
Professor, I'd love us to look at the different forms of abuse that are there, because when we talk about abuse of the aging and the elderly, what hits my mind, and I believe a lot of our viewers, is automatically physical abuse, which occasionally happens once in a while. An elder person is taken to hospital, ati ameanguka, kumbe they were beaten and the leg, since it's a bit weak, yeah, it needs treatment. What are the other forms of abuse that the elderly go through?
Yes, and you have said the first one, Faith, that someone may be pushed, may be hit, may also be cut, you know, not carelessly, but intentionally.
Sure.
Because one is so tired with this aging person to a point that they would want to eliminate them from this world. And we have seen even situations where parents have been killed. Whether they are physically abused by a spouse or even children or people who are in the homestead, they can be relatives or even caregivers can do the same. All these are people who can abuse the elderly, and the physical abuse comes out a lot. But the other one that happens much more than the physical abuse is the emotional abuse, things that they are called.
Yeah.
Being shouted at, being taunted, you know, being made fun of, even the way they have dressed. And maybe you have dressed in that way because you are at home. You are not going out there, maybe to church or to meet other people in the shopping center. And therefore you dress in a particular way. And because of that, and people are having a mentality, you have aged. That is the reason as to why you are wearing in the way you are wearing. And therefore you are laughed at, you are shunned, you are shouted at because of that. And this makes the elderly people now start losing their other abilities. They can lose even their memory because of the way they are treated by others in the homestead. Because once you feel like you're not important and people are wishing you dead, then there is a way you can also forget yourself and start neglecting yourself to a point that the abilities that we say that the aging population is losing can be accelerated because of the treatment that the elderly people are getting from the rest of the others allowed them. We have also seen situations where assets and property and finances of old people get misused or get taken away, even without their own their permission or their approval, and people just want to use their property and assets inappropriately, and they are helpless because there is nothing they can do about what people who are energetic are doing allowed them. And therefore that becomes something else that has been very rampant. And we have seen even situations where they have been blooded to be witches so that their property can be taken away. Not because the elderly person is a witch, because having gray hair does not turn you into a witch. Just like Lefred said, attaining a certain age does not mean that now formerly you have become old. You've not been aging. This is a time that formerly you have become aged. It's a process that we've been going through, and therefore declaring one to be a witch so that you can take advantage of this individual because you have put a label on this person. And when you say this one is a witch, the community around you is also going to see them as a witch, because there is no science about we found this individual doing 1, 2, 3. That is why we are declaring them to be a witch. Communities seem to believe things they have not proven. And therefore, if one says this one is a witch, the other say, by the way, they are looking like a witch
Yeah.
because they are
Walk like
having
one.
gray hair, because the neck is getting longer, because they are having wrinkles. They are actually looking like witches.
Yeah.
And therefore, that belief, again, the ignorance that we carry along with us, because we are forgetting that aging brings those kind of aspects to an individual. So we take advantage of the aging people.
Yeah.
The other way in which we abuse them is treating them like children. You're talking to them like they are children. Ati mam, unasema nini? And even we repeat the things that they are saying in very funny ways. And they are seeing us dramatizing the way they talk. And they can't believe that the children they brought up and the people they took care of are the ones that are treating them in that way. And I think that's why the Bible is very clear that honor your mother and father, so that your life can be longer living in this world. But when we mistreat them and make fun of them and we are talking to them as if they are children, we diminish them, we minimize them.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Also, what I'm understanding is that every form of abuse has a psychological effect on them, that if they were treated better, they will be better, even in their older age. Yeah?
Yes. And even to just take it out from where Prof has just left it,
Yeah.
the Bible in Ephesians would say, honor your father and your mother, so that it shall be well with you. So it's not just about the long life, so that it shall be well with you. Many people will, when they start treating the parents as if they are children, those that treat them especially as children are the parents that are in the middle and lower middle class. But the older people in the middle and upper middle class, even at the old age, even at 70, 80,
Yeah.
90, are still respected. We have seen even big politicians, CEOs in this country, even when they retire, we see them still being treated with respect,
Yeah.
even at that advanced age. But an parent is not financially very stable, we still think, we start treating them like children. We think they don't know what they are doing,
Yeah.
what they are saying. And it's a myth. It's a myth which needs to be deconstructed. That when you grow, because they say you start crawling as a baby. When you grow old, you again start walking with the supporter, so you go back to the walker.
Yeah.
And people
To
start
becoming a
thinking,
baby.
ulianza kucrawl, sasa ukizeeka una
Yeah.
crawl tena, kwa hivyo hata mawazo ina
Ya
crawl.
kitoto.
Not necessarily. You read in the Bible in Proverbs 29, it will tell you clearly that the gray hair is the source of wisdom, is the pride of the old. But when you look at it, like he said, gray hair or wrinkle starts looking like a sign of a witch, then we are missing the mark.
Yeah.
When you look at the older parents and we think they don't know what they are saying, it affects them psychologically because they are all children. They, brought you up, they breastfed you, they educated you. Now you tell them, I don't feel like eating. But because you think just the same way you force a little baby to eat, we mami kula, lazima umalize hii chakula.
Yeah.
She starts wondering, yani nimekulea, sasa nimekuwa mtoto, mimi sielewi ni kitu gani nafanya. And it feels so bad when you choose literally not to understand them. The way you treat a baby, you want to treat a parent at that age. That is one of the biggest form of abuse.
All right.
When you look at them like they are children.
They're children.
Yes. When their opinion is also not factored in. They say they want, like, for example, you have brought them to your house because they are unwell. They want to go back to their home, either in the village or wherever that home is. And you tell them, no, you can't go. No, you can't go now, you have to stay here.
Yeah.
Now, why are you not respecting their opinion at that moment? They start wondering, does it mean that I no longer matter? Or whatever I say, no longer no one takes, care of it. So that lack of even listening to their opinion and factoring in their opinion, it is not good.
All right.
At all.
Yeah.
And even the myth, that physically they are weak. It's abuse, a form of abuse. They even want to pick something. They want to farm their little farm.
Yeah.
Then you tell them you can't do it because already you have told your mind at 65, they are
Cannot
too
go to
weak.
the farm.
If one has a car and they want to drive, you almost want to tell them, no, you can't drive because now you are 70. I saw an 80-something-year-old white lady in Nanyuki who had been brought in a documentary, has her Datsun 1200 ile ya gear.
Okay.
And she's still driving it herself.
Yeah.
Yet we, our parents at 70 plus, already we think they cannot hold a hoe,
Yeah.
a jembe,
Yeah.
to do their work. So it's, let us listen to them, hear what they are saying, and, respect their opinion.
Quite enlightening right there. Thank you so much for that, Rev. Let's take a very short break. We'll be right back to continue with this discussion, so do not move a muscle. Welcome back to Transforming Families, and thank you so much for keeping it right here. In case you're joining us right now, we are talking about aging and elderly abuse. Now, before we went for the very short break, Reverend had just mentioned that let's stop treating the elderly in the society as children, and used an example that reminded me of my great grandma. She was quite aged and she used to go to the shamba. Of course, for us, I was quite young at that time. For us, it was a sight to behold, because I'm like, why is she stressing herself going to the shamba? But I really liked how no one told her, go back to the house. Why are you going to the farm? And so once in a while, she will go to the market and walk and all that. And I think it's a form of keeping them lively and knowing that they have a purpose, because they go to the market, interact with people, and they feel so well to socialize as well.
Which is actually a myth.
All right.
Also, that aged people are not productive.
Yeah.
So that's why even when she wants to take her skuma to the soko marketplace and sell, you think she does not know what she wants to do, because she should be productive. We even start wondering, why is she looking for money? Why is he looking for money?
Which is what I thought at that time.
Hii pesa yote anatafuta ni ya nini? You should just sit in the house, eat and drink and be unproductive. Seriously, what makes people think the only reason why I would go do business is because I need money to feed for myself or educate children? I want to remain productive until the day God calls me home. But now we think our older people, our older parents, are no longer productive. And you tell them, we'll shut after mali. Sasa kaa chini, ukule.
You have everything.
You have everything. Be unproductive. Thank you.
Which also brings in the example which I really love, that if we look at 80-year-old who is a president, because we have them, or who's a politician, a minister, and an 80-year-old back at home is so frustrated, and the kids think, when will this one go? I mean, this,
but we don't look at that.
But on the other side, the 80-year-old is doing quite well,
yes,
leading a whole team or a business and all that. So it's just a myth that really needs to be deconstructed, and that is why we are here tonight talking about this. So, Professor, let's look at why are these elderly people victims of abuse, and who can really be a victim? Because we are talking about them being victims, and we think it is only the family members who can abuse them, or we think maybe when I take them to a home care, then they are safe. So what situations put elderly people at risk of being victims of abuse?
Right. The question of why and what are the reasons that make these elderly people to be mistreated? Number one, I can say it's because we lack knowledge, we lack information. And that is why we need to educate people about the needs of the elderly populations, so that people can know what to do. And even when, like, the caregiver, maybe it's only one caregiver, the rest of the other children do not want to have anything to do with mom or to do with dad, and you feel overwhelmed, because sometimes that's what happens in dysfunctional families, that people won't come and sit down and ask themselves, mom is needing care because we can see she's losing sight, or even losing hearing, or even her memory is going down. So how do we take care of him or her? And that can be a reason also as to why they get abused and they get molested, because they are losing abilities. But when families come together and they think, how do we all of us take care of mom and dad or take care of this aging member of our family, then they are able to get solutions. So when people don't sit down and think through and understand what are we contending with, if mom has gotten dementia and she's not remembering anything and she's not able to connect with us, now how do we give her honor? I remember one of the episodes where we were looking at the family honor, and we need to think about the elderly honor. The elderly honor that was there in the African community thinking, where people needed to be respected whether their abilities have gone down or they have not gone down. So that needs to be factored. But something else that makes the elderly people to be abused is because of lack of finances. Or when families are impoverished, what happens is that we think about limitations and we think about who is becoming a burden to us. And so because of that, people can be mistreated, not because of them, but because of the lack that we are having as a family. So again, that needs to be looked into so that like the government is doing well when it is giving the elderly tokens. But we also know that that money, they may not be using it. It may be used by other people through other people taking advantage of this money that is coming for the elderly. And they are waiting for it even much more than the elderly person who is supposed to be the recipient of these finances, so that they can be bought like food and we can look into their nutrition so that they can be well taken care of. So a combination of factors make the elderly to be abused.
You've mentioned about finances, which is a very key factor. Maybe relevant to ask, because initially when we started this discussion, we mentioned that kids were looked at as an investment, that I'm educating you so that in future you come and take care of me, which is rarely the case nowadays. So how can a young parent right now prepare and say, you know, let me set aside these finances just in case at some point my family feels like I'm a burden? I know that we can use this.
Thank you very much, Aida and Prof. One of the things I would want to say is that as you prepare for your own life, you start preparing for retirement, and I guess this is what we'll be looking into. I guess next, in about a week or 2 weeks' time, we'll be looking at that, the issue of retirement. The moment you get employed, you start preparing for your retirement then. Because if you wait, you'll be frustrated and you will regret. Because if you were to like suspend preparation for retirement, imagine you're going to peg your life on someone else. That is going to be a problem. And that's why many countries that are advanced, they will look into a retirement fund as a must for everyone. You invest in retirement. In this country, we'll have something like NSSF. It is something that was there so that everybody can be able to invest for retirement, so that when you retire, you can be having some little fallback finances for. So as a young person right now, do not look at your children as your insurance policy for retirement to be taking care of you, because the society has changed, the dynamics have changed. To be able to organize your finances in such a way that if you are going to be saving some little money in the retirement package, the better, so that in the older age, you can be recouping a little of that. Is it in business and a business you're going to establish? And then that business to a point whereby the business can start working for you, not you working for the business, because at some point, your energies may fail and you cannot be able to run the business. So the business should be able to work for you even when you are not physically in that business. So whatever business you're doing, is it selling mboga, is it selling, hiyo sukuma wiki ama githeri unapikia watu ya mjengo, start planning it in a way that that githeri ya mjengo, or where you're employed, or is a shop, that finally by the time you're in your 67, that business can run without you physically being there, so that you don't bend backwards and look into your children to take care of you. It's important to say about that. And even as you say for your retirement, you also want to let your life be where it is today. If you're able to ride a bicycle, even when you retire, at least there's a bicycle. If you can pay for electricity, be in a level whereby at least you can pay for electricity. Don't try to retire like so-and-so or like so-and-so. Look into your ability, which is your level financially, so that where you retire at, you're also not, so much impoverished by the situation you're going to find yourself in at that particular time. Because, like Prof has said, when you become financially dependent on other people, people will easily get tired. And I always tell people, you cannot peg your survival on another human being's existence. If you peg your survival on your children's existence, suppose God calls them home before you, what will happen?
Yeah.
It's just the same way I will even tell you, men and women, even spouses, if you're married, you cannot peg your survival on another human being's existence.
Sure.
That human being can die. What will happen? So even as a person, even as you head to retirement, don't peg your survival on the existence of another human being. Yes.
Yeah, but maybe a question, is the financial independence a guarantee that you will not be a victim?
It is not a guarantee, because you could have finances and then you have a caregiver and the caregiver abuses you. So the finances is, having finances is not a guarantee you'll not be abused, but it's a better situation than not having finances. It's a better situation because it means you can afford a caregiver, and even your children or even a relative or even a friend can keep an eye on the caregiver because they are not financially burdened.
Yeah.
And you have seen in the society, people who are financially stable, is it a politician? Is it a CEO? Is it a manager somewhere? Is it a businessman? Even in their 90s, you go to their home and they are very clean.
Yeah.
They are neat. They are well taken care of. You go to the hospital when they are sick and in the hospital, they are very well taken care of. We sit in meetings and you have someone who is old and aged, and you'll find enough people going to ask them, what are you going to eat? What are you going to drink?
Yeah.
Because they are able financially.
And it's not about honor.
It is, it's not about honor, it's about what they have. It's about their finances. And look at someone, you would go to a meeting and someone is aged and probably they do not have a car. And the people there know that this person is going to need a ride. And when you give them a ride, you cannot drop them by the roadside.
Yeah.
You must drive them right to their home. And you may find some people wanaanza kujipa shughuli haraka haraka. Hakuna mtu anataka kubaki nyuma ili asipeane lift, apeane ride.
Yeah.
So having finances is not a guarantee.
All right.
But it's a better position than
To
when
be at.
you are, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you for that. You mentioned that, of course, caregivers that
Yes.
can also abuse an elderly person, and I'd
Yes.
love to bring this up. Now, here is your mama or here's your grandma, and you've hired a caregiver for them because, city life and employment, and you're busy, and you believe and trust that they are in good hands. But back at home, the story is different. So when you go to visit them, you can tell something is not right. Mom doesn't look okay, shosh, kuna venye, but you don't know how to get it out from them. What are some of the signs that can tell this person is undergoing some sort of abuse, and also how to get them to open up and tell you what is happening, Prof?
Yeah, there are things that we see that make us know that all is not well. Like they will complain. They may be talking. There are those who will not talk, but there are those who will say, I don't want this caregiver. But you may also see the way they are dressed. They have become unclean. They used to be clean before, now they are very unclean, and the house is very unclean. So basically the environment they are in and even themselves are not taken care of. They may be malnutrited. You may see signs of a person who is not eating well. You had left food enough for the elderly person to eat and to have enough, but it would seem like they are not even cooked for. And even food is not cooked at the right time, the times that they eat, and therefore they retreat They don't want to talk about it. You can see a person who has withdrawn from other people. So you need to ask yourself, is it them and what they are going through, or is it this caregiver and what they are doing to the elderly person?
Yeah.
Because if it is sudden, then it cannot be that sudden. We said all things are a process, unless maybe there is a traumatic experience that one has gone through. And therefore, the drastic change of behavior need to be an antenna for us to ask ourselves, what is happening that we need to think about?
Yeah.
And maybe to add
Sure.
on what Prof has said, it's true. You can have a caregiver, and the caregiver is taking care of your, aging parent or aging relative, and they are abusing them. And even if they're in talking terms, the aging parent may not talk.
Yeah.
Because probably they are threatened, and they're told, if you report me, by the time they go back, ni mimi na wewe. So you will find them not being able to report because fear has been instilled in them.
Yeah.
Again, if you go home, you may find, like Prof said, the place is unkept. But now, because they know when you're coming, the place will be kept because the boss is coming to check. I would always say it's important to do impromptu visits.
Okay.
And when you're going to see your parents or the aging relative or aging friend, do not announce. Go impromptu. That way you can almost be able to tell the ideal situation they live in. Because you can either go and you find they are unkept, they have not taken a bath and all that. You can easily tell whether the person is being abused. And, then you take it up from there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, thank you for that, because we have people who are cheeky, as you said. The boss is coming, so you try to tidy up things here and there.
Yeah.
Prof, you've mentioned over and over again that we are ignorant and people need to be educated on the needs of the elderly in the society. Let's talk about that.
Right. Like we mentioned before with Lefred, geriatrics is about the care for the elderly. And the care for the elderly is taken up by professionals. Those can be doctors, those can be psychologists, those can be social workers, those can be community health workers, because even the community health workers, they have a piece in terms of going to take care of the elderly. But again, geriatrics has to do with even how does a family take care of one of their own. And it will do a lot of good for people to be educated, and the church can take it up in educating people about the needs for the elderly, so that they are not minimized or they are not exaggerated, because sometimes that's what we do. So when we are caring for the elderly, we need to understand what the needs are. I have been taking a friend of mine through remarital counseling. She's 72 years old, and she's getting married to somebody who is 80 years.
Okay.
That's a need. And we were talking about property and her children. What would she want regarding that? And we said that we are going to bring a lawyer on board, so that when it comes to the children, they don't feel, because she's going to get married, then the property that used to be their daddy's is going to be taken to another man. So that was a concern for her regarding the children and how she would want to take care of the children. So we don't have to think about the elderly people in regard to their health that is failing them, but we also need to think about other needs they have. Like we were saying with Lefred just before we entered here, that sometimes we think that the elderly people, they don't need any sexual activity, or they cannot engage in sex. But apart from they are in this age, and maybe they are looking weaker than the way they were when they were much younger, that does not mean that they are not engaging in sexual intercourse if they are within a marriage relationship, they still will continue undeterred, depending on the way they look at it.
Yeah.
And when we believe in the elderly, when we look at them as people who are enabled, then they look at themselves with pride. They continue dreaming about life and wanting to do things in their own lives, and wanting even to make their lives to be productive because of the way we look at them. So I would want to say that caregiving means that we are not looking at them as people who are disabled and people who are lacking the strength and the will to continue living, but people who still have the will to live, and we need to have goodwill for them,
Yeah.
so that they can continue with their lives. You used a very good word, meaning and purpose. We need to relate with them in a way they can pick meaning and purpose of their own lives and even live for many more years. We need many people who are 100 years and more. And we have seen that some people who are 90 years, I was reading an article where a 95-year-old rides a bicycle and goes to the farm and does a lot of things in the farm.
Yeah.
That's the way we need to look at them. Not
Sure.
people who have to stay at home and be fed,
Yeah.
like Reverend was saying,
Yeah.
but people who can do their own, just like we continually graduate children because they are attaining abilities. For the elderly, we need to respect they have abilities that need to be sustained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that.
So that's a myth.
All right.
That's one of the myths we were talking about, that the elderly do not know what they want. The elderly have no need for sex.
Yeah.
It's a myth. You hear a 72-year-old lady getting married to an 80-year-old lady.
Yeah.
So you're wondering, 80-year-old anaenda kuolewa akafanya nini?
Yeah.
72 anaenda kuolewa akafanya nini? Because you already think, if you are 30, you only think sex is enjoyed by the 30-year-old. If you are 40, you only think it's up to 40. And for 50 years, they have no need, no interest. So we have this myth that the moment I am beyond whatever age, 65 or 70,
Yeah.
you want to think for me that I have no need for milk, I have no need for sex, I have no
Yeah.
need for meat,
Yeah.
I have no need for meeting friends. And even you want to tell your aging parents, where are you going to? You stay at home. Or maybe you drive them to church or whatever, and then you come drop them home and back to their room, and you do not want them to leave. You think they no longer have need for socializing. Those are many myths that we need to keep on deconstructing in our minds, and knowing that this person is still living. Their faculties are okay. The legs may be weak, but the mind is not weak. Even if probably their mind may be a little bit weak in another area,
Yeah.
their sexual organs are not weak.
Yeah.
If, for example, they are having a problem with a certain food, the doctor says don't eat a lot of carbohydrates or proteins, that doesn't mean that the mind has gone to bed. No, we need to treat them with respect. And it is biblical that we respect our parents.
Yeah.
Either those parents are 10 or 100 years, respect them, treat them with honor.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for today's discussion. It has been very enlightening. I'd love to say, if you're a caregiver and you feel overwhelmed, I remember you had mentioned that because of dysfunctionalities in the family, a caregiver can feel very overwhelmed. Seek for help before it gets to a point where you are now abusing the elderly in the society. Maybe last few remarks briefly from both of you as we conclude today's episode. Prof?
Yeah, I would want to say that we need to rethink the way we take care of our aging population. When we go to statistics and research, it tells us that by the year 2030, we are going to be having 70 million people who are going to be 65 years and above. That means that we need to think about the needs they have and respond to those needs. As countries, nations, as even families, we need to think about how do we respond and respond appropriately.
Oh, thank you for that. Right.
My parting shot would be today, thank you listeners and the viewers for being together with us. I will simply want to tell you the Bible says respect your parents and it shall be well with you.
Yeah.
God giving you the opportunity to have a parent and care for them is such an honor. Others never got the opportunity to see a parent,
Yes.
to even see an aged person in their life. God has given you the opportunity to have that parent, that aged person in your life. Take care of them. When they are out of your picture, it is when you'll treasure their value. Value them now, honor them, enjoy them while they are still around you. God bless you.
Thank you so much for this evening and for the discussion that we've had. I really appreciate you guys. I'll wrap this up very briefly with a quote that was mentioned earlier on here, that old is still gold. So let's treasure it. And with that said, keep interacting with us on our social media pages. Facebook and YouTube is at CAC TV Kenya. Till next time, my name is Faith Kaulu. Goodbye.
Amen.